Mom's
The
tattoo
moment the little
matches
girl
yours.
spoke, the world seemed to tilt beneath Daniel Harper's feet, because he was standing in line at a quiet community clinic, holding paperwork with one hand and his coffee with the other, when the child tugged gently on his jacket sleeve, pointed at the faded tattoo on his forearm, a small crescent moon wrapped in wildflowers, and said with innocent certainty, "My mom has the same tattoo." And before you scroll away, subscribe, because this story is about how truth can hide in plain sight for years and still find its way home. And Daniel forced a polite smile at first, assuming coincidence. Because tattoos weren't rare and memories can play tricks, but his chest tightened when he looked down, and saw the exact placement of her finger. Tracing the same curve he'd memorized since his 20s, the same tattoo he'd gotten on a reckless road trip with the woman he once loved more than anything. The woman who vanished from his life without explanation the night she told him she was pregnant. The woman he searched for until hope turned into survival. And the girl's mother was standing just a few feet away, distracted, filling out forms, her hair tied back, her posture tense in the way of someone used to carrying the world alone. And Daniel told himself not to stare, not to imagine, not to reopen wounds that had taken years to scar over, because Daniel was a single father now, raising his 8-year-old son Lucas after his wife died of cancer, a man who believed he had already lived his share of heartbreak. But when the girl repeated it, "She says it means home," his breath caught. Because that's exactly what the tattoo meant. And his knees felt weak as memory rushed in like a flood. Remembering how Anna had laughed that day, how she'd said the moon was for change, and the flowers were for surviving it, and how she'd promised they'd always find their way back to each other. A promise Daniel believed until she disappeared. And when the woman finally looked up, and their eyes met, the years between them collapsed into a single moment of stunned silence, because Anna recognized him instantly. Because you never forget the face of the man you loved enough to run from, and her hands trembled as she dropped the pen, because standing between them was a child who carried pieces of them both. And the truth, long buried under fear and circumstance, had finally spoken through an innocent voice, and the clinic faded away as memories resurfaced. Anna leaving not because she stopped loving Daniel, but because she was scared, young, alone, trapped in a cycle of instability she didn't want to drag him into. Because when complications arose during pregnancy and she lost contact, she convinced herself disappearing was mercy, not abandonment, and Daniel, for his part, never stopped searching until life forced him to keep moving. And now here they were, years later, older, broken in different ways, standing face to face because a child noticed matching ink, and the conversation that followed wasn't dramatic or loud. It was quiet, painful, honest, spoken in fragments and long pauses, because rebuilding truth takes time. And Daniel learned that the little girl, Mia, was his daughter, raised with love but without answers, that Anna never married, never stopped thinking about him, and never imagined fate would be this direct. And Daniel didn't explode with anger or demand explanations. Because grief had taught him something essential, that life is messy, and love doesn't always arrive the way we expect. And over the weeks that followed, Daniel slowly stepped into Maya's life, not as a hero or savior, but as a man learning how to be present, watching Lucas and Mia circle each other cautiously before laughter replaced fear, and Anna wrestled with guilt while Daniel wrestled with forgiveness. And the shocking truth wasn't just that Mia was his child. It was that love had survived absence. That family can fracture and still find a way back. And the final moment came months later, when Mia traced Daniel's tattoo again and said, "See, I told you." And for the first time in years, Daniel believed that some things are never truly lost. They're just waiting for the right moment to be found. And if you stayed until the end, remember this. Truth doesn't always knock loudly. Sometimes it whispers through a child's voice and changes everything. After that day at the clinic, nothing returned to normal. Yet everything began to make sense, because Daniel Harper couldn't unhear the little girl's words, or forget the way Anna's face had drained of color when their eyes met. And the days that followed were heavy with conversations neither of them had ever imagined having. Sitting across from each other, at a small diner where the smell of coffee mixed with old memories. Speaking carefully as if one wrong word might shatter the fragile bridge forming between past and present. And Anna told her story not to excuse herself, but to explain the fear that ruled her then. How she had been 19, bouncing between unstable jobs and unsafe housing. How the pregnancy complications scared her into isolation. How she convinced herself that disappearing was the only way to protect Daniel from a life she felt she couldn't offer. And Daniel listened. Really listened, not because the pain disappeared, but because years of loss had taught him that understanding mattered more than blame. And as he began spending time with Mia under slow, careful boundaries, he discovered pieces of himself reflected in her curiosity, her quiet kindness, the way she studied the world before trusting it, and Lucas watched it all unfold with the guarded wisdom of a child who had already lost one parent, asking difficult questions in soft voices, and Daniel answered honestly, never promising certainty, only presence, and weeks turned into months as shared routines replaced awkward silences, school pickups, park afternoons, bedtime stories where Maya would curl beside Daniel as if instinctively recognizing safety, and Anna stood at the edge of it all, torn between gratitude and guilt, learning that forgiveness doesn't arrive all at once, but grows through consistency, and the shocking truth that emerged wasn't a dramatic reveal or courtroom moment, it was quieter and deeper, that love had never died, it had only been paused by fear, and that family isn't defined by uninterrupted timelines, but by who chooses to stay once truth is known. And the real turning point came one evening, when Daniel attended Maya's school art night, and saw her drawing taped to the wall, a simple picture of 4 figures holding hands beneath a moon wrapped in flowers, labeled in careful letters, home. And in that moment Daniel understood that destiny isn't about perfect choices, it's about second chances earned through courage, and as the years moved forward, the pain didn't vanish, but it transformed into wisdom. Anna grew stronger, Daniel learned to open his heart again, Lucas found joy in being a brother, and Mia grew up knowing her story not as abandonment, but as survival. And when someone once asked Daniel if he wished things had been different, he answered honestly, that he wished for less pain, yes, but not for a different ending. Because sometimes the longest roads lead exactly where you were meant to arrive. And if you've stayed until the end of this story, remember this, the truth doesn't always come when we're ready, but when it does, it offers us a choice. To turn away from what hurts, or to step forward and build something real from it. And sometimes, the most shocking truth isn't what was hidden, but what survived.